Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Dimitri Johnson, and you're listening to MMALatestNews.com.
It's time to roll, baby.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to MMA Latest. We're here to debate the future opponent of John Jones. He's been very active on social media recently, calling out Francis Ngannou. It's been a tremendous back and forth, but I'm here with James and Jay from the channel, of course. We've seen him more regularly, and we're here to discuss. Guys, what is John Jones' next move? He's been very active on social media, as I said. What have you made of it so far, James?
Yeah, he's been all over Dana White's case, hasn't he? Demanding the Francis Ngannou fight. Is he going to get it? I think not. I don't think Dana White's going to want to make that fight. There's so much money on the table for it. And if it's not going to be for a world title, I don't see any point in it at the current time.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting one where it would be a non-title bout at the moment. Jay, what's your thoughts on the future of John Jones and what he's been saying on Twitter, I guess?
Yeah, so I kind of just echo what James said, really. I don't think the Francis Ngannou fight will be happening anytime soon. I believe he'll defend his light heavyweight title again. I think he's come out and said that the negotiations didn't go well, that money hasn't been brought to the table in order for him to move up to heavyweight. But I think everybody here is kind of certain that the money will be there to make that fight. It's just there's no point in putting money on the table for that fight when there's no title on the line. That fight is a world title fight for the big bucks, but not right now. No, John stays at 205 for now.
Yeah, I believe so. And I think there's a couple of names in mind. It's annoying. It's almost annoying that he's wiped out his division by himself already. But he has got Jan Blachowicz there as probably the standout contender, the only one he's not beaten already. Dominic Reyes is probably in with a shout with a rematch. But, you know, we saw with those three events, MMA fans don't get what we want. And it'd be so typical and so almost ironic that Jones will lose his light heavyweight title before he fights at heavyweight.
Yeah, I think in terms of John's next opponent at light heavyweight, it seems like Jan's probably going to get the fight. I'm not massively happy with that. John Jones seems to be going on this run of people who he's expected to beat quite comfortably. Last time out, he fought Dominic Reyes, and yes, he was another one of those contenders who he thought he'll just brush aside. And let's face it, he didn't. I personally thought Dominic Reyes won that fight. I think the majority of people think Dominic Reyes won that fight. And for John to move up to heavyweight and have this, huge reign over them and beating the likes of Ngannou and Miocic, I can't take it seriously until he beats Dominic Reyes. That's the rematch I want to see, because for me now, Dominic Reyes is the unofficial king of the light heavyweights.
Yeah, Jay, I guess if you're booking him a light heavyweight fight, what do you book him at the moment?
Yeah, I see what James is saying, but I think because officially the win is over Dominic Reyes, there's only one person left for John to fight, and that's Blachowicz. So I think that will be the fight. For some reason, I don't think he will rematch Dominic Reyes at all. I do think he will go to heavyweight eventually, but I think his days are numbered at light heavyweight. I think he will defend it against Blachowicz because that's the only one that he hasn't really faced. He's like you said, he's kind of walked through everybody and he's beaten them kind of at ease. I mean, it looked like he had a decent fight against Thiago Santos, but I've watched it back. I don't think so. I think he kind of took control quite comfortably. But yeah, I just think it's going to be Blachowicz and then up to heavyweight for John.
Yeah, to add to that, you saw him, when he fought Anthony Smith, people were calling for a rematch against Anthony Smith because of the illegal knee, and Anthony Smith went 5 rounds with him. Then he fought Thiago Santos, and the immediate thing was give Thiago Santos a rematch. He looked good kicking his legs. Thiago Santos broke both of the ACLs in his knee at that point. He could barely walk. And then obviously again with Dominic Reyes, he pulled off the win. Everyone was calling for a rematch, despite Jan Blachowicz being on an absolute tear. There was calls for Johnny Walker being next in line, Corey Anderson. And, he's only a second generation of light heavyweights in the UFC. There's only so much he can do in that division. And I think it's clear from the fans' point that the move to heavyweight is probably the best option for him. But there's also one name also being rung around, is Israel Adesanya from the middleweight division. Now, he's got to defend his title against the likes of Paulo Costa and probably Darren Till. But he's already said that he wants to fight him in 2021 at the Raiders Stadium in Las Vegas. So could we see Adesanya versus John Jones?
We could do, and I think it would make massive business. I think it's a fight that John Jones wants. For me, Adesanya could be a little bit too small. He doesn't have to cut a lot of weight to make 185. And for me, why move up when there's so many good fights for him? Could you imagine a build-up with Darren Till? You know, you could do the Kelvin Gastelum rematch. Paulo Costa definitely deserves a fight. Jared Cannonier is there. For me, there's a lot more Israel Adesanya needs to do for his legacy at middleweight before he moves up to light heavyweight.
Yeah, so I was just kind of touching off what you were saying about how when Anthony Smith had his fight with Jones, and then people called for a rematch, and then the same with Dominic Reyes and stuff like that, Thiago Santos. But I think that's also because of Jones' skill set and his ability is matched so high that when anyone gives him any sort of a close fight, people kind of want to see it again and again, just to kind of get closure on it. I think because of his ability, people expect him to breeze through these people because they're not the biggest names. But I think sometimes you just have to take that into account. Georges St. Pierre was one of the greatest of all time. And look at him. He many a close fights, many a tough fights. He's been hurt many a times, but he finds a way to get by, and that's what champions do. So I don't think we need rematches for every person that gives John a run for his money. At the end of the day, John's the champion. And if he beats these people, regardless of how he beats them, you know, he needs to move on to the next man. And he's a businessman as well. So I think more business for him would be at heavyweight. I think he needs to put Adesanya out of his sights. I know that's a personal thing that he would like to solve, but John's business is at heavyweight. So that's what I feel anyways on that scenario.
Yeah, just to throw it out to you, obviously he is the king of the light heavyweight division. He's more or less Mayweather in fighters at the moment, but he's not had a finish despite, other than Gustafsson and Cormier rematch, he's not had a finish since 2013. They've all been decisions. So it says a lot about his fighting style, and you know he's had a lot of time in the cage. You know he's been doing this a decade now inside the UFC. He's been champion a decade. He could be coming towards the end of this run. He doesn't look. You know, we reminisce about John Jones and the spectacular elbows, the knockouts he's had. The DC rematch, both DC fights, in fact, are phenomenal fights. But he's put a lot of damage in there, and he's also, he spent 3-4 years combined being banned and whatnot, and having his issues. He still has his issues, as we've seen this year. But he could be coming towards the end of his tenure as a fighter in the UFC, or as a fighter in all.
Yeah, I think John Jones still has a lot left to give. I think he struggles when he's unmotivated. I mean, we saw in the Elvin St. Preux fight, somebody who should have breezed past. And, of course, he won every single round, but he didn't perform like a vintage John Jones. And for me, that's just because he wasn't up for the fight. And his next time out against Daniel Cormier, one of the greatest of all times, he was excellent, wasn't he? And then, of course, he beat Anthony Gustafsson after that. And I think he's lacked motivation in his last 3 fights. Smith, he beat him comfortably, but he didn't stop him. Thiago Santos was close. I still think John Jones won that fight. I know there was a bit of an uproar about it, but I thought John Jones did enough to win. As Jay said, because it was close, I think a lot of people kicked off. I did think he lost the Dominic Reyes fight, but I think the best version of John Jones would have handled Reyes, which is sort of why I want to see it again. I want to see what a motivated John Jones could do against Dominic Reyes. But I think that move up to heavyweight would motivate John. I think legacy would motivate John. And I don't think we see the best of him unless he feels mentally like he's challenged. Unless he gets like a Stipe Miocic or a Francis Ngannou where he really feels like he's up against it. I think that's when we see the best of John Jones. So I think if he gets these tough matchups, I think we actually will see a little bit more of him, because I think it's actually a bigger risk if he fights the lower level competition. Yeah,
to play devil's advocate, he has had his issues with steroids and the usage of PEDs. Maybe have we already seen the best, and this is just the remnants of the John Jones that we've seen, or is it just purely that he's down, he is bored, and he's in a division that doesn't inspire him? When you look up and he's got, if DC wins the fight, you could easily rebuild DC John Jones 3 at heavyweight, and then you're right back into the mix of the fired up John Jones. But the same with a Miocic running Ngannou fight. It's very, very exciting matchups as a fan, and probably for him as well. It's very exciting for him.
I think a lot of it, you could be right with a couple of things that you said there, but I think a lot of it comes down to also, John Jones has been the champion forever, basically. Like for almost as long as he's been in the UFC, he's been the champion of the light heavyweight division. So, I mean, you can look at other scenarios. You can look at sport, for example. You can look at Wayne Rooney when he first burst into the Premier League. He was 16, but yet you see as he got into his early 30s, he was born and out. You only have a certain shelf life at the top of the sport, especially in combat sport. So I think it could be just a mixture of that and where he realizes his body isn't designed to go out there and just starts people anymore. He has to be more calculated with it. And I think you would see the exact same things at heavyweight. It's just who kind of falls into his trap to where he has the ability to finish fights at heavyweight.
Yeah, heavyweight's a broad division. What weight do you think he would be best at? 220, 240? Obviously, he's probably not going to come in at a 260, 265 end. He's going to be somewhere in between that light heavyweight and heavyweight boundary.
Yeah, I think that John Jones at heavyweight would probably be about 220. He's not that big a guy. And I think the sort of smaller heavyweights do the better work at heavyweight. I mean, Stipe Miocic isn't that big a guy. He said that he can make light heavyweight. DC, a former light heavyweight. I think that's a better weight for heavyweights to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I've said it before. That 230, 240 weight almost deserves a division of its own because they are almost in a class of their own. You see the likes of the Ben Rothwells, the Stefan Struves, even Ngannou. Ngannou comes in at 260. The Ream coming at that. I think Walt Harris came into that the past week. It almost deserves its own division, really, at 230, 245. It's such a broad spectrum to go from, 207 pounds up to 265.
Yeah, I think they struggle with the speed as well, the bigger guys. Like Francis Ngannou can knock people out all he likes, but Stipe Miocic's that little bit smaller, that little bit quicker. And I think everyone just assumes because Francis Ngannou's been on this fantastic tear in his last 4 fights, knocking people out for fun, that he's just going to walk through Stipe this time around. But let's not forget, Stipe Miocic's beaten quite comfortably. It was quite a rocky first round, but Stipe Miocic used his superior wrestling and his superior striking. If you watch that fight back, it was almost like Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury-esque in that first round, with Ngannou swinging these huge bombs, Stipe slipping out the way of them. There is no guarantee that Francis Ngannou can connect on Stipe Miocic's chin. So I think these big guys could have their own division.
Yeah, I just kind of echo off that. Like, I think the first fight was Stipe and Francis Ngannou. Ngannou went into that fight assuming all he had to do was touch Stipe, and I think we kind of touched on this before, Mitch, that the belt was his then. But when he realised Stipe was rolling with the shots, he was taking them and he was coming back. And then the longer the fight went on, he drained himself out and Stipe beat him up pretty good. I don't think that would be the case this time round, but I don't think that's purely how he's going to win by being a little bit more composed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it would be, it'd definitely be a different fight. I think it'd be a harder fight for Stipe this time round than it was before. But yeah, I think that there's just a certain bracket of the heavyweights. Like you put John in there with Francis, I think John just outworks him all day long, especially with pace, speed, like his timing. Francis just doesn't have them things. And I think so, if you could separate that, I think the UFC needs more divisions anyway, but if you could separate that to like a cruiserweight or something like that, or a junior heavyweight, I don't know. I think maybe it'd get a bit more exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I'll give you a fun fact. If you add up Francis Ngannou's wins inside the cage, it adds up just to over 18 minutes. And he's had 10 wins inside the UFC. So you can see why he thinks, he can step into that cage and that first punch he lands is going to be the knockout blow. We saw it against Rosenstruck. But, he went 25 minutes with Stipe. So that one fight alone outweighs the time he had in order of his wins. It's crazy what Francis Ngannou has done.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I wonder a lot how much Francis Ngannou's improved because obviously he lost quite comfortably to Stipe. Then he fought Derek Lewis and it was that horrible, boring fight. And I think he had a lot of psychological issues going into it. In his 4 fights since then, yes, he's looked fantastic. He's absolutely annihilated 4 of the best heavyweights around. But he's had so little time in the cage, and all he's really done is wing those big punches away with very little technique. And yes, he's connected with people, and yes, he's put them out clean. But has anything actually improved with Francis Ngannou? Can we analyse anything to say he's got better there, he's got better here?
I think that's the nature of his power. He's just hit so hard that he doesn't give you time to study, to realise.
Yeah, do you think there could be an element of with John Jones and Ngannou, there could be an element of a Fury versus Wilder style, where we know John Jones is the most skillful fighter out of the two, and he could just school him. But there's always that 10% in you that thinks if Ngannou connects, it's game over for him.
Yeah, the difference is with Stipe Miocic, obviously styles make fights, and I think John Jones is a better fighter than Stipe Miocic. But Stipe is a Golden Glove boxer; he knows how to slip and slide shots. John Jones has always been hittable. And it only takes one of Francis Ngannou. Yes, I think John Jones is the best fighter of all time. And he has to go in the favourite. He has the far superior skill set. But you'll be on the edge of your seat because it isn't impossible that John Jones gets hit. And if he does, as tough as he is, Francis Ngannou will take his head off.
Yeah, I can't really counter that, to be perfectly honest. It's kind of pretty straightforward.
Yeah, he is a scary man. It's like, you saw the tweet being like, they're not offering him, John Jones saying he wasn't being offered enough to fight Ngannou. You have to wonder, just how much would you have to be offered to fight a man like that? I think you're asking for at least $5 million, aren't you, in the bank, just to go 25 minutes? Or at
Joe
least...
probably makes that anyway.
Yeah, it depends on what they offered him, but I don't know. We don't know what their sort of negotiations are for him. But
from what John said, he basically said the UFC would offer more in pay-per-view buys, but not so much in the purse. I mean, it kind of makes sense in today's climate, right? With this pandemic and everything, it makes sense to do that, because what's the point in giving you more money into your purse when all the money that's going to be generated is going to come through pay-per-view buys? So, absolutely. I think there was ways to make that fight, but it's kind of like what I said to you before we went on, before we started recording. I feel like that fight was made it's purely a title fight. The money is there to make that fight. Everything's in place for that fight. It's just, there's no big reward for it. You beat Francis Ngannou, what happens then? You're just the number one contender. You know, it's too big a fight to not be a title fight.
Yeah, and despite being, there's a lot of John Jones' boring comments going around at the moment, but I don't think that's a fault of his own. That's just, he's suffering the same thing Mighty Mouse suffered towards the end of his UFC career, where he's being given these number one contenders that just aren't on his level, and he doesn't really have to show off the best of his skills. And I think there's a lot of talks of Demetrius Johnson going and facing TJ Dillashaw at bantamweight and really challenging him there. But at the same time, John Jones, he can make a good payday in his division and just keep defeating the contenders. But at the end of the day, and especially his outside of the cage antics, he does lose some supporters and some fans there. It can be hard to support John Jones, and I think an Adesanya fight and an Ngannou fight does need to be in a stadium where you've got 60,000 fans there paying for the gate, and it does make it a special occasion. I'd see both of those fights maybe being in Africa, perhaps, especially with Adesanya and Ngannou's heritage.
Yeah, to talk about your point of John Jones and Demetrius Johnson, the comparisons at first, you've got two of the greatest fighters of all time. And I think at points, John Jones has sort of neglected the idea of God's heavyweight. I know when DC was the champion up there, he said, why would I give DC a chance to beat me when he would have the advantage at heavyweight? Now he's looking more and more likely to get to heavyweight. And to make your legacy as good as it can possibly be, you need to take on big challenges and you need super fights. One of DJ's huge issues is that he avoided the super fight with TJ Dillashaw because there was no real people in that division that could challenge him. He was just going to blast through every single contender. There was no excitement, and he didn't have a massive character outside the octagon either. John Jones has more of a character. If he chases the big fights up at heavyweight, then that's where he's going to make his legacy, because there's no contenders at light heavyweight. Yeah, he can fight Jan, but what's it going to do for him in the grand scheme of things? It's not a super fight. You don't get your legacy off the back of that. So if he wants to make a huge fight, he needs to go to heavyweight, and that's what's going to cement his legacy, and that's what's going to do huge pay-per-view buys. Because at light heavyweight, there's nothing that I think stands out to people. And what was your other point, Mitch?
Adesanya, both Adesanya and Ngannou, if they were to face John Jones, it would have a huge sort of moment for the UFC if they had that fight in Africa with their heritage against John Jones. And both would be huge title fights. I do agree that it does need to be more than just a non-title bout. You can't have John Jones and Ngannou as a co-main event or even a non-title main event bout. I don't think it just works, but I think the most important thing is we get through this DC-Stipe trilogy, and then we can work out where the heavyweight division lies after that.
Yeah, I think it'd be... Sorry, Jay, go on.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I just think, when we put these things into place, right, the two people that were mentioning about fighting John Jones, one's a heavyweight and one's a middleweight. Okay, so there's a lot of personal beef between Jones and Adesanya, but Adesanya wants to wait to 2021. Jones' move to the heavyweight division is getting closer and closer. That fight's not always going to be there. Jones won't go to heavyweight and then drop back down to 205 to meet Adesanya. So if that fight was going to happen, it either has to happen directly after Blachowicz or towards the end of the year. I don't know, but I don't think that fight will happen. I do think the Ngannou fight could happen, especially in the stadium. It's a stadium worthy fight. It'll break the heavyweight pay-per-view record anyway, I think. But I don't know. I just think for some reason I cannot just stick to my opinion. I think that fight's just going to be a title fight. I don't think anything's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree. Because even say Stipe beats DC, you probably do get the Stipe and Ngannou rematch first. But you can see if DC wins, he either vacates the belt and then you got a John Jones and Ngannou fight. But DC keeps talking about retirement. But Dana White and everyone says he could probably fight one more or two more. You could easily turn around and say, "Here's 20 mil for you. Let's have DC Jones 3 for the title at heavyweight." And John Jones wins that, and then you've got Jones and Ngannou, with Ngannou coming to that belt.
Yeah, I think if DC wins, he's all but guaranteed to retire. If Stipe wins, I think there's a chance he might retire because he's done everything there is to do in the sport. But, there's still super fights out there with him. Would I rather see Stipe versus Ngannou for the vacant belt or Stipe versus Jones? It'd be Stipe versus Jones. Firstly, I don't think Stipe would be overly interested in Ngannou rematch. I don't think it's an unnecessary risk, and he beat him very comfortably the first time. He extinguished that fire, no pun intended. And now, so yeah, he beat Ngannou.
That was absolutely pun intended.
He beat Ngannou, and I think the idea of the greatest heavyweight of all time versus the greatest fighter of all time, it just sells itself. And I think, being honest, John Jones goes to the slight favourite. The UFC will expect Jones to win that fight, and if he does, then you get the Jones and Ngannou fight, and I think that'd be absolutely humongous.
But yes, to get back on to John Jones, I just noticed John Jones is 32 and Ngannou's 33, so they're pretty much the same age. So, it's not like we're going to see one retire enormously before the other one. They're both at the same age. I think this is probably a time for us to wait with DC and Miocic coming towards the end of their career. I think they'll be retired within the next year or two, both of them. It's interesting. How do you see a fight with Jan going? Can you see the upset perhaps, and then we lose everything again?
Yeah, firstly, to talk about the age point, it's not necessarily your actual biological age. It's more miles on the clock.
True.
John Jones has been there for a very long time, so it doesn't matter that there's only a year difference between them. John Jones is an older fighter than Francis Ngannou for me. Jan, I don't necessarily see the upset. If John gets complacent, then maybe Jan can land a big shot. But I think he'll be a little bit too stiff, and I think John Jones will pick him off with kicks. I think he'll be a little bit too good for Jan, despite the fact that John appears to be slower.
Yeah,
I guess I'll kind of piggyback off that. Yeah, I do think the same thing. I think this actually could be a fight where we do see an unmotivated John. I don't think it'll be pretty. I think he'll kind of. Jones is good at keeping people at bay, especially when he's unmotivated. Like a lot of them, I remember on the Joe Rogan podcast, he said a lot of his fights he'd get drunk a week beforehand just to give himself a safety net and an excuse as to why, if he ever did lose. And you kind of see that in some of his performances where he didn't really want to be there, but he just done enough just to keep people at bay and just get through the night. And he's probably the best unmotivated fighter I've ever seen. So
yeah, he's considered the greatest of all time, and you say he comes in there almost bored and doesn't want to be there. But at the same time, it's like he has been there since he's 23. We've seen him grow up inside that cage. He's the youngest UFC champion of all time, and he does have a lot of miles on that clock.
Yeah, it's mental when you actually break it down, because in the Anthony Gustafsson fight, he didn't train. He didn't take it seriously at all. DC, he literally said himself that he was doing coke the week before. He said that in the press conference. It's like, how on earth are you doing that? Anthony Gustafsson and DC are arguably the second and third best light heavyweights ever. Obviously, there's Chuck Liddell and other people that you can throw into that mix. But they're two brilliant, brilliant fighters, and he's breezing past them drunk and high. It's just mental how good this man is. And how good could he have been if he was motivated his entire career? But is there an effect with like Tyson Fury where he needs to have a little bit in his brain, where he isn't perfect? Are all special people a little bit flawed? Is that why John Jones is so good?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you only have to look at some of the top fighters in every sport, or not even fighters, athletes in every sport. There's always a bit of crazy to them, isn't there? Like some of them have this bad boy image or whatever. Conor McGregor's the exact same, you know. I don't know. Look, I just think he needs that because I don't even think he needs it. You know, I think that's just who he is. I think that's genuinely his personality, his character traits. And some people like it, I love it, but his skill is undeniable. As weird as he is as a person in terms of his personal life, his ability is next to none. He's pound for pound, absolutely.
A question I want to ask, and this can go to either of you, but I remember a few years ago, I think they were filming Counterpunch, which is sort of, you know, like the gloves are off that they do in the UFC. And Daniel Cormier said to John Jones that he's rotten. He's rotten to his core and he will continue to make mistakes. It seems like that was correct because since then, John has made mistake after mistake after mistake. Recently, there was the thing with the gun, the drink driving, whatever it was. Will we ever get to a point where John Jones isn't messing up?
Probably not. Probably not. I actually think, like, sometimes I fear that as well, especially, like, living in Dublin, and we're kind of like, I'm not far from Conor McGregor, and we kind of share the same opinion of Conor McGregor. So I think sometimes we wish that retirement doesn't happen for Conor McGregor, because what happens after that? When you take away the fights, you take away the training, you know, what does he do? You have all the money in the world, you know, what does your life become then? You know, now Conor looks like he has turned the corner at the last couple of months. For John, I kind of think the same thing. You know, what happens when he does stop fighting? You know, he's all that money that he's made, you know, goes down as probably the greatest of all time. You know, you're going to lose your mind a little bit.
Yeah. Sorry, go on, Mitch.
And I do worry for John Jones in the fact that if you look at McGregor, he's put his money into businesses, you know, he's got proper 12. He's almost got his way out, and you can see he's got other passions. With John Jones, he's been doing discus from such a young age. It's almost like, what else is he doing outside the cage in terms of, does he have other businesses? What does he do once he retires? And you could still almost see him, you know, we look at Chuck Liddell and BJ Penn as almost fighters who are incredibly gifted, but once they're retired, you know, they're not examples to look at of retirement, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a bit of a bad comparison on my part between Conor and John, because Conor's he went off the rails for about 2 years post Mayweather fight. John's been doing this stuff since the beginning. So, and he's always been that way. And if you listen to interviews and stuff like that, apparently he's been this way his whole life, his whole teenage career, his wrestling career. You know, he was a party animal, wasn't he? So, and it's followed him to this day. So I don't know if he'll ever stop. I don't know if he'll ever get away from that.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult. Is there a way of John Jones finding some inner peace? For example, there was Tyson Fury went completely off the rails, and there was a period where it was like, what's he going to say next? When, you know, obviously there was all that controversy around Spotty when he made homophobic comments. Shortly after, you know, he made some anti-Semitic comments. It just seemed like it was one thing after another for Tyson Fury, and then obviously he dealt with the depression and he came out of it a better person. He was giving advice to any people across the world who were struggling with mental health. John Jones, by the looks of it, I mean, he's a self-sabotager. It wouldn't surprise me if he suffered with some sort of issue himself. He's a man of God. Tyson Fury used God to overcome that sort of thing, his belief. What methods could John Jones use to overcome anything that he's going through at the moment? How could he get his life back on track?
I don't know, because, I mean, he's done rehab. He's taken the correct measures to stop certain things, but yet they seem to fall back into his life. So I don't know what measures he can take. Tyson Fury went through the rehabilitation and got back training. You have to remember Tyson Fury was also retired when he went off his rails a little bit. And he just got worse and worse and worse, and then he built himself back up. John's been active doing these things, and he's also done the rehab stint. And then, like, just I've listened to him so many times. I remember he done a walk around with Ariel Helwani, and just listening to him, sometimes you think, well, actually, I believe this fella. And then the press conference, when he tested positive for UFC 200 against DC, he came out and he cried, and I was like, okay, I believe this fella. And then after that, again, it's just mistake. And then it's mistake again, and then it's mistake again. I just don't know how to take him at this point. I don't know what he's going to do to get away from that. I think it's up here. I think it's whether he wants to or not.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we've almost sort of touched on the Adesanya aspect in terms of Adesanya is a smaller fighter coming up. We see, again, to mention, John Jones almost half-assed went at Blachowicz on social media. They had a little bit back and forth. But he's been much more active with Adesanya and with Ngannou, because they probably give him the most sort of question marks in terms of his legacy, in terms of if he lost to either of them, it's a big legacy fight rather than another title defense or a title fight.
Yeah, look, I think those things do happen. I remember when Chris Weidman fought Anderson Silva at the time. Like I didn't see Chris Weidman winning that fight. I remember when Frankie Edgar fought BJ Penn for the first time. I didn't see Frankie beating BJ Penn. You know, there's so many scenarios that you can look into and see the shock happen. Now, John is susceptible to that. Like he's human, so it could absolutely happen. But I just don't see. I don't think anybody at light heavyweight really has enough for him. And it's like James said about Dominic Reyes. He gave him a close fight. I too initially thought Dom beat him, but after rewatching it, I kind of could see why John would have took it. But I think that's the only thing that could kind of keep him hanging around. But John essentially does great in rematches. He tends to finish the rematches. So, you know, if you give him more time to study it, I think he will get you out there quickly.
Yeah, you can almost see the same. He is very similar to Conor McGregor in terms of his tendencies, anyway. Because obviously we saw what McGregor done in the rematch with Nate Diaz, and they both seem to be able to download their opponents. Again, in the Mayweather fashion, Mayweather downloads his opponent's skill set and then makes his game plan to counteract that. And John Jones he's good with it. He can wrestle to his skill set is incredible. And he is probably other than maybe GSP, the most complete mixed martial artist. He probably had Demetrius to that as well.
Yeah, I'd even say that John Jones was more complete than GSP, because GSP, yes, he was a good striker, but he spent most of his time wrestling, whereas John Jones just seems to be able to do whatever he wants to whoever he wants. I mean, how is it possible that this man can out-wrestle Olympians? How is it possible that he can compete in grappling with the best grapplers in the world? He can outstrike the best strikers. It's mental how talented this man is, Mitch. And I mean, the weird thing is, you mentioned Floyd Mayweather was like a complete fighter, and he was a defensive master. Mayweather, for all the camaraderie and all his braggadocious nature where he paraded around with money, Mayweather had one of the greatest work ethics in boxing history. He was up every morning at 5, working extremely hard. He lived and breathed the sport. John Jones doesn't even do that, and he's the greatest we've ever seen.
It just shows what would happen if he did do it, if he did have that mindset. Like, if John Jones definitely had that mindset, there wouldn't be a debate as to who the greatest of all time is. There wouldn't be no George St. Pierre or Demetrius Johnson in the equation. It would purely be Jones and then the rest. Like his skill set is already unbelievable. So if he had that work ethic, which he doesn't, Jesus, it'd be frightening. Absolutely frightening. He'd be heavyweight champ by now, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good spot to almost wrap it up on. I think we get one last thing. If you had to predict John Jones' next fight, who would it be? And who would you like his next fight to be?
I think his next fight will be against Jan, but I would like it to be against Dominic Reyes, because for me, I mentally need to get past that, because I think he lost the first fight.
Yeah, I think his next fight will be Jan. And probably Dominic Reyes as well, just because I think the first time it was entertaining, and I like seeing John in rematches. He tends to up his level a little bit more, so I'd like to see that again.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement that now we're probably going to see Jan almost rightfully get a title shot. He was on a good streak until that Thiago Santos fight where he lost, and Thiago Santos got the title fight off that. But yeah, I think we get Jan finally. We've got some Polish power in there. He dismantled Luke Rockhold at 239 beautifully. And you could almost say, I'm almost 50-50 between Ngannou and Adesanya, because I do like Adesanya as a fighter. I do want to see him almost go up there and challenge him. And I think with it being a more skillful matchup, that could be almost a 4 or 5 rounder where you're almost taken away, almost like you were against Gastelum. Whereas Ngannou versus Jones could have a very one-sided factor, albeit there's a very impressive knockout merchant and knockout artist on the other side of that. So I think we'll see Blachowicz next. Maybe even, it depends. It all depends. I think it depends on this DC fight. If we get Ngannou as a champion within the next 6 to 12 months, I think it could go Blachowicz, Adesanya, and then Jones moves up if Jones gets Ngannou then.
Yeah.
Could very easily do that.
Yeah, just before we conclude this call, Mitch, it's a question, and we've not really discussed it at all today, but we've talked a bit about Israel Adesanya. I said I'd like to see him stay at middleweight, and we've talked about the idea of maybe Adesanya versus Till and the Ultimate Fighter. And I think for a reality TV show like that, I don't think the model is dead as maybe people think it is, because we've had a lack of entertainment with the coaches, and I think those two trash talking each other would definitely excite people. But if we got Adesanya versus Till, and I know Adesanya is your favourite fighter, but Darren Till's your countryman, who would you be supporting, Mitch?
I'd probably end up trying. I don't know. That's one of those fights where you wouldn't be mad at either side winning. But I think those two, you could easily see them go through a 2-fight or a trilogy fight even. Darren Till is a Liverpudlian, so it almost has a little bit of bias there. But again, I would like to see another. I think it's time for the UK to get another champion, and I think Darren Till. It's between Till and Edwards at the end of the day, but I think Till slightly edges him in terms of becoming the champion first.
I would rather see Mike Perry and Darren Till coach for the banter.
That would be horrendous.
I think they'd have more fights than anybody else in that gym.
Yeah. Mike Perry is a character. He's certainly a character.
He said he wants to kick Darren Till's mother in the face.
I saw him make an extremely vulgar comment about Darren Till's mum earlier, actually, on social media.
Yeah, we've seen that too. Don't worry.
He's an entertaining character, and I like what he's about.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, Adesanya Till's paths are crossing very soon. I think Paulo Costa probably gets the next title shot. But again, I think this lockdown has been very beneficial for Till. He's grown a lot of love and a lot of fans at the back of his lockdown for being so real and been very, very funny in his, in his posts and everything. He's
only been saying one thing. Let's be honest.
Constantly retweeting Helwani. He's constantly tweeting, X number of fighters, either robbed. Yeah, he's made the most of the lockdown, and he's, you could almost the bromance that he's building up with Adesanya as well. The DMs back and forth. It is funny, and it's nice to see that, and that build-up is better than the one is to Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa does have a history of PEDs, but he's more or less rightfully the number one contender.
Yeah, I think people are sleeping on him as well, to be perfectly honest. Like, I know Izzy's the champ, and rightfully so, his ability is unbelievable, but Paulo Costa is by no means an easy fight. So I wouldn't be making the Darren Till Adesanya coaches just yet. I'd sit tight until that fight happened, until the Costa Adesanya fight happened.
Yeah, there's also a fear perhaps that we saw Romero Adesanya. Sorry, there could be an aspect of the same fight happen between Adesanya and Paulo Costa, but Costa's more relentless than Yoel Romero is.
I think Costa's got
won that fight.
I think Costa's got a steam at Israel Adesanya. It's up to Israel Adesanya to keep him at bay and out kickbox him. I don't see it being a boring fight because Costa's going to come at him.
Yeah, and the scary thing is Adesanya is it's probably the right weight for middleweight, but if you look at the body comparisons of Adesanya and a Costa, it's almost hell.
Costa's a super heavyweight who somehow manages to make middleweight. He's in his own division. He's massive.
Yeah, like I weigh more than Costa. Like that's a joke. Like that shouldn't be real.
I don't think I make light heavyweight at the moment, which is kind of sad at the moment. But.
Well, this lockdown has definitely made me make light heavyweight.
Yeah, he's got like a 24-pack. I've not seen a human being built like him.
Yeah.
Is that him running his Twitter account? Because I'm very confused lately. Sometimes it looks like he's being hacked, and sometimes it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And it all looks bizarre, like the way his weight fluctuates. I mean, 1 minute he's looking like a bronzed Adonis, and the next he's looking like, like a fat Ricky Martin. and he just seems to bounce up and down. And there's, I don't know, he's all over the place.
I like him. I'd watch him and Romero fight each other every day of the week. I would.
Yeah, that fight was, that fight was, it was two Adonises going at each other. How both of them make 185?
Yeah, but that's the thing, though.
186, I guess.
You're a Romero you look at and think, you're the most ripped human being I've ever seen. How on earth are you making 185? And then he looked like a dwarf
And then
compared
Costa
to
says, hold my beer.
Costa. Yeah, Costa was twice the size of him.
Yeah, hold my protein. Yeah.
Then he got Ngannou. That's 60 pounds heavier than them both.
Yeah, but I don't even think
On
Costa probably wouldn't even look that small compared to him. He's honestly one of the biggest humans I've ever seen. I've got no idea how he's at 185, but it's no idea.
Yeah, it's not. He would be fun at light heavyweight, but again, we've seen middleweights go up. We saw Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold, and Jacare all attempt to go up and got sent quite swiftly back down to the middleweight division. So it is, there's a 20-pound gap there, and it can be very dangerous to move up.
Yeah, but Costa wouldn't look small compared to like the Undertaker, so I don't think he's going to have any problems.
Yes, it is. It is horrendous. It is tremendous seeing about that, and I'm glad. Tonight there's no fights. And it's almost sad. We had 3 in 1 week, got no fights tonight, but then we're back to a schedule, which is even Tyron Woodley. Look at him at welterweight. He's jacked as well.
Yeah, but when he cuts weight, I know, essentially, it's what everyone looks like when they cut weight. But I remember looking at a clip of him and Conor McGregor after the New York weigh-ins, the MSG one, and he looked small. He looked around the same size.
Was that the one where they were giving it to each other, weren't they?
Yeah.
They were looking at each other down, weren't they? And there was talk about that fight being next.
So he looked small. Now, obviously, when he rehydrates, that changes. But I wouldn't necessarily say I think because he'd been calling out Adesanya as well and wanted to jump up the middleweight as well, wouldn't he? But I don't think he has that size on him. I think Romero, Costa, all the top middleweights would probably handle Woodley, to be fair.
Yeah, we saw how Usman handled Woodley, and Usman's bigger than Woodley is in terms of his mass and his frame as well.
Yeah,
Usman could probably be a middleweight quite happily.
Yeah.
No, I think Woodley's done as well. Woodley's in that 37, 38 age bracket as well.
Yeah, he's 38, yeah.
He's got one foot out the door with TMZ anyway, so he's got his sort of next bit of his career going for him as well. So I think, yeah, of course, his rap career is flying at the moment. So I reckon he'll be done by the end of this year, if not close to next year anyway.
That's if he doesn't win. That's if he doesn't win.
That's true. Because if he wins, you could easily say he deserves a title shot because of him being the former champion, because he made so many defenses of that title. And, he is talked about as the consensus greatest of all time in terms of his welterweight, or very close to GSP.
Yeah, I think people got a bit carried away. And when somebody starts to make a bit of a wave, the idea that they're the greatest of all time in that weight division comes out straight away. People seem to forget GSP's body of work. And I don't think you can say
I know.
Got his GSP straight away. And at the same time, in terms of him getting another world title fight, it's not going to happen anytime soon. He could knock out Burns in the first round. Absolutely sensational performance. But even still, he has a very poor relationship with Dana White. And Usman beat him extremely comfortably in a very boring fight. So as long as Usman's the champion, Woodley's not getting a shot anytime soon.
And also, you have to, one thing that wasn't mentioned, he didn't even make Conor McGregor's pound for pound list today. So he's definitely not pound.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely aspects of him ducking Leon Edwards, but I think we'll leave that conversation for the preview that we'll do later on in this week, because obviously he does fight May 30th. It is nice. We're a week away from fights again. We had, if we reminisce, we had 6 weeks without fights, but we're finally back. And we're back in a good stead as well. There's some good cards coming up, despite what you might hear on social media, complaining, etc. But yeah, I think John Jones will be a heavyweight by the end of next year, most likely, I imagine. And it's just nice to see him go off that social media and not be the boring John Jones that we've become almost accustomed to in the last year or two.
Yeah, I mean, at least if he's tweeted, he can't be driving. So,
I mean, he could be doing both, and that would
You've already
he could be. Bottle of tequila in one hand, phone in the other, going down the highway.
Yeah.
Him
Totally.
and Chael going back and forth has been funny as well. Ethan Chael's had a good
Chael
fight.
beats him 10 times out of 10 in the verbal, right?
Mm.
Okay, Jones got the win over him. So, but Tito got a win over Chael. But Chael kills these people.
Chael was born for this, Mitchell.
You don't say he's undefeated and undisputed for nothing, you know?
Yeah, he's incredible. He's incredible. But yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it on, guys. It's been a fantastic chat as always. James, where can everyone find you?
All over social media, Twitter, Instagram. What about J Sweetenham99 Twitter, J.Sweetenham99 Instagram. There you go. There are your plugs.
Yeah, my Twitter is J_Farrell1 and my Instagram I don't know. So I'll have to come back to the next one.
No worries. Yeah, make sure to check out his work and everyone's work on the website as well. MMA-latestnews.com. Obviously, it's fight week coming up, so there'll be a whole load of articles going up on there, of course. But always make sure to keep it locked to MMA Latest. Make sure to hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you for the Woodley Burns preview.